With Sonic 1's release, Sega had become a household name throughout the early 90s. The game is often attributed as to why Sega had managed to give Mario a run for his money. With that said, a sequel to the game was inevitable. However, this time the game would be developed in only 9 months by Sega's American development team, Sega Technical Institute, or STI for short. To keep a long story short, Yuji Naka, the lead programmer of Sonic 1, had quit Sega of Japan due to disagreements, with him joining STI and a lot of the original Sonic the Hedgehog dev team with him. There's a little bit more to it than that, of course, but after 9 months of rough development and a final stretch of 48 hours to make the game fully playable from start to finish, Sonic 2 had hit store shelves on November 21st, 1992. I remember first playing the game sometime when I was around 8 or 9 years old. I played it through some sort of Genesis game collection for the PlayStation 3. I want to say it was Sonic's Ultimate Genesis collection, to be specific. Of course, I never really got past Chemical Plant Zone at that point in time. I would always lose all my lives on that one segment where the water rises due to either drowning or being crushed. It wouldn't be until a few years later that I would actually beat the game. Onto the story now. After the events of Sonic 1, Sonic began to grow bored on South Island. So he hopped into his plane that he apparently had and stumbled upon West Side Island by pure chance. Here, he would meet Miles Prower, nicknamed Tails because of his second tail. One day, while resting on West Side Island, Sonic is awakened by an explosion, with Eggman, of course, being the cause. As it turns out, Eggman had followed Sonic and learned of a lost civilization on the island that had used 7 powerful stones. Eggman would go on to figure out that those stones were the Chaos Emeralds, with West Side Island being home of the long-lost 7th Chaos Emerald. Now, Eggman aims to find all 7 Chaos Emeralds with the help of his robot army in an attempt to launch his latest and greatest weapon, an orbital space station he calls the Death Egg. So it's up to Sonic and Tails to find all 7 Chaos Emeralds before him, and make sure that the Death Egg can do no harm. Overall, I'd say it's a pretty solid plot that raises the stakes just enough for a sequel while still being relatively simple. Pretty sure a lot of kids were shocked that there was a 7th Chaos Emerald back in the day. I guess it was like needing to go through the revelation that Santa wasn't real. Now luckily for me, I found it easy to accept that fact when I first found out. Yeah, that's right. I'm a grown man. Anyways, starting off with the visuals, everything here has seen a great visual upgrade. Sonic looks a little bit bluer than before, and I think that makes him stand out a little bit better. The new title screen is great, showing off the wing demo that Sonic has become known for, this time with his little buddy nearby. Unlike Sonic 1, where the colors in the game could be a little bit muddy, here you won't be seeing that problem that often. Everything here has some sort of flair to it. Emerald Hill has vibrant colors that pop, just like Green Hill. Chemical Plant, while being largely gray, still has these yellow floors with blue chemicals flowing through the pipes, giving the zone a good sense of color contrast. And another example, which I'd argue is the prime example, is Casino Night, which has these golden walls lined with red carpeting. Just these neon signs hanging in the background and the level's music being really nice too. I'm getting a little bit ahead of myself though, aren't I? Moving on to gameplay, if you've ever played Sonic 1, then you pretty much know how to play this game too. Sonic's speed is built on momentum, you can attack by rolling or jumping into your enemies, and of course there's power-ups along the way to help Sonic on his journey. Just try to go as fast as you can using momentum, power-ups, and optimal routes to your advantage. However, this time Sonic has a new ability, the ever so iconic Spin Dash. It really helps out with the pacing of these levels, since instead of running away from the slope and to run back after getting enough speed, you just rev up one of these things and you're off. And it can be yours for the low price of holding down the D-pad and mashing the A button. But if you act now, we'll throw in the Carpal Tunnel bundle, which gives you Carpal Tunnel after repetitive use of the Spin Dash. For more information, call 555-555-5555 or go online to www.isthisbit2weird.com/spindash. Again, that's www.isthisbit2weird.com/spindash or 555-555-5555 for more information. Joining the Blue Rat, Hedgehog, is Tails. Yeah, that's pretty much all I have to say about him. He'll follow Sonic around throughout most of the stages, maybe pick up a ring or bust open a badnik here or there, but that's about all I have to say about him. You can actually play as Tails alone, but don't go in and expecting to be able to fly. Despite that little flying animation when he's following you around, he can't actually fly when you play as him in the original game. Rings will, once again, act as your life system. Grab a bunch of them, or hell, even one, and you'll be safe for one hit. I feel like I failed to recognize the genius of this system. If Sonic were to have gone with a traditional health system or a power-up system like Mario, that would encourage careful gameplay. You want to keep as much health as you can for the boss, or stay your strongest throughout the level. The ring system provides a means of allowing the player to take risks and not get punished too hard for it. However, make one too many mistakes, and you could wind up losing all of your rings, leaving you in a messy spot. I suppose while I'm on rings, I should mention how the special stages in this game work. Similar to the last game, in order to have a shot at snagging a Chaos Emerald, you have to collect 50 rings. Unlike the last game, the entrances to the special stages won't be at the end of the stage, rather through these here star posts. These are scattered all throughout the stages, and serve as both an entrance to the special stage and an act's checkpoint. When you cross one of these with at least 50 rings, sparkles will spin around the top. Jump on in, and you'll enter the special stage. Unlike Sonic 1's spinning mazes that were frustrating to control and honestly not that fun to play, Sonic 2's special stages are actually alright in my honest opinion. I'd go as far as to say that they're actually kind of fun. It's a good thing I exist outside of normal space because I think I would have just gotten mugged for saying that. Instead of navigating an endlessly spinning, confusing maze, here in Sonic 2 you'll run forward collecting a certain amount of rings and avoiding bombs that make you drop around 10 rings. Get that amount or more in rings 3 times and you'll get the Chaos Emerald. I prefer this approach since I feel like I'm actually in control as to what's happening, rather than just aimlessly jumping around and vaguely suggesting where Sonic should go. But, of course, this approach is not exempt from any criticism, and it has 2 glaring flaws. The first one being that it heavily relies on memorization, requiring the player to play through these stages multiple times until they figure out the path that they need to travel to get the most amount of rings. The second issue being that while this is by all means a technical achievement, with Sonic and Tails both being pre-rendered 3D models and the rings, bombs, and half-pipe itself being drawn by the Genesis in real time, it comes at the cost of draw distance, which only amplifies the first issue by not letting you see where there's rings to grab and bombs to avoid. And that's also without getting into problem 2.5. What, you don't see it yet? Let me zoom it a little bit closer for you. Yep, that's right. Little Buddy Tails. This little shit has cost me so many Chaos Emeralds on my first run of the game, partially because of the fact that when he's with you, the game makes you collect a few more rings, but also because of the fact that he has a delay when moving. You see, Tails here has his own ring count, meaning that if he collects rings and gets hit by bombs, you lose rings here too. Now, this wouldn't be so bad if the delay between your input and Tails' input wasn't so long, but in these stages, it takes him a good 1.5 seconds to respond to the player's input. The reason why I call this a half issue is because, thankfully, you can choose to play as Sonic or Tails alone in the options menu, but that still doesn't change the fact that this can be a little bit of an issue if you're playing as both Sonic and Tails. But, of course, despite how frustrating these special stages can be sometimes, with all their flaws, going through them all is worth it, because this time, collecting all 7 Chaos Emeralds gives you a glimmering gift: Super Sonic. Just grab 50 rings and jump, and you'll transform into Super Sonic. Pretty obviously inspired by the Super Saiyans from Dragon Ball, Super Sonic can just absolutely blaze through these stages thanks to his enhanced speed, jump, and invincibility. His golden quills spiking upward and his look becoming more fierce. While you're playing as Super Sonic, your ring count will slowly drain. If it reaches 0, you'll power down back into regular old Sonic. This is simply put, the perfect reward for collecting the Chaos Emeralds. While it allows you to absolutely blaze through the stages, it also puts you at even more of a risk if you're not skilled enough, leaving you weaker than you were while you had rings. Really, the only criticism I have with this transformation is that it's automatic. The second you even graze that jump button with 50 rings, Sonic will immediately transform. It's a minor annoyance, there's very little reason to not be super from a gameplay perspective, but I would still like to activate the super form on my own. On top of that, if you're expecting Tails to also have a super form, you'd better be prepared for disappointment. For some reason, Sonic has a super form, but Tails just doesn't. Which is sort of weird to me, since this is basically just the speed shoes combined with the invincibility power-up with a more powerful jump. Finally, moving away from gameplay, let's talk about these levels, yeah? Firstly, each zone has been shortened down to 2 acts instead of 3, minus that one, but we'll get there when we get there. This allows the stages to fly by faster, almost never overstaying their welcome, and I also think it just makes you feel how fast Sonic is as well. First at the bat is Emerald Hill Zone. It sort of looks like Green Hill Zone too, sort of like it's riding off of Green Hill's coattails. I mean, the tropical theme with the palm trees, the checkerboard pattern dirt, the striped grass, you get the idea. This stage really just serves as a playground, only further complemented by the music itself. It just sounds so fun and bouncy. Also, can't really blame them for kind of riding off of Green Hill's coattails. I mean, they already caught lightning in a bottle with that stage in Sonic 1, may as well try replicating that again, I suppose. Next up to Peach's chemical plant, and let me tell ya, this zone looks at the entire first game and just chuckles to itself before saying, that's cute. We have these slow moments mixed in with these high-speed segments where you're running down these pathways, sometimes even outrunning the camera. The gimmicks of this zone are these tubes you jump down into that will make you just zip across the level, as well as these infamous yellow blocks that can can and will crush you if you're not careful. And that's without getting into the rising water segment. Yeah, a lot of you know what I'm talking about. I even have a friend who hates this stage because of it. In my opinion, the speedy segments and the jams far outweigh that moment though, especially since you can purposefully let the water flow and then spin dash jump on these pathways here to get out. Next up without a baseball metaphor is Aquatic Ruin Zone. I don't really have that much to say about this zone when it comes to visuals outside of they're good. I can appreciate the level design decision of allowing the player to avoid the water if they take the right path though. Hey, that doesn't mean I managed to do it, that just means I know about it. There's also these arrow things that Eggman's planted around. They're not annoying to be honest, I'd forget about them half the time when running through the stage. They're usually a non-issue so long as you keep running. Then there's Casino Night Zone, a solid zone I'd say. Definitely my favorite visually. It's like if Las Vegas were to have been a human pinball table. It feels a little bit like a take it slow stage if you ask me. You know, just kick back, relax, take in the cityscape, have some fun on these pinball machines. There's not many badniks around here, so just take your time, have fun. It's even sort of told in that swing music in the background. Huh? Oh yeah. Gambling addiction joke, moving on now. Now it's Hilltop Zone's turn. Yeah, I got nothing. This is just Emerald Hill but blue and with lava on the ground. That's about it. Like, it's not a bad zone in the slightest, but I'm not really blazing through the stages to get there either. Now, Mystic Cave Zone, on the other hand, now that's the zone I do blaze through the stages to see again. If not for the feeling of being underground in some abandoned mines, then definitely for the music. One of my favorites, if not my favorite track in the entire game. And of course, how could I not mention the infamous Spike Pit of Shame? If you take the lower path of the stage here, you'll find this pit with a switch over it that will bring down the bridge. If you're taking it slow, then you'll usually be fine. However, since a lot of kids were playing as Supersonic, they would just blaze on through, falling straight into the pit. And since not even Supersonic's jump height is enough to get out of the pit, a lot of kids were stuck there until they ran out of rings. Say, on a side note, do you guys ever get that feeling that something is hiding here? Never mind. Forget I said that. Onto Oil Ocean Zone, which is... okay. I'm not a big fan of the level's theme, honestly. I'm usually not too big on desert levels, and the music itself makes the stage feel really slow to me. I don't know why. Come to think of it, it might not even be the music at all. It might actually just be because half the zone's mechanics boil down to waiting. I did appreciate the cannon mechanic, but not as much as when they first did it in Chemical Plant with the tubes. Again, not a bad zone, just okay. Especially in comparison to all the previous zones in the game. And now, here we are, everybody. Metropolis Zone. Don't let that jamming music fool you. That's the song that plays when you enter the gates of hell. And that's exactly what this zone is. Hell. While the aesthetics are good, probably some form of base Eggman had constructed to speed up the construction of the Death Egg, this stage flops in its enemy placement. And if you grew up with this game, the names Asteron, Shellcracker, and Slicer all remind you of traumatic experiences with this zone. These fuckers are placed in the worst areas, decking you off a ledge, exploding into shrapnel that knocks you off those damn bolt elevators, and always fucking hitting you. This is easily the lowest point in the game because of these 3 infuriating enemies, and to make matters worse, the main mechanic sucks. Running on these here bolts will cause them to move, so you have to use them as an elevator. The problem is, if you're playing as Sonic or Tails alone, these things are so fucking slow that you're guaranteed to be hit by the nearby Asterons. And if you got hit off near the top of the elevator, say by a fucking Slicer, you can't jump high enough to get on top of the bolt now. So now you have to run away to respawn the bolt and hold right for 3 more minutes once again, all because of dick enemy placement. Oh, don't worry, it also gets worse. So, you get to Act 2, right? The game has only ever had 2 acts per zone, so you think, thank God, it's finally over. No, it's not. There's more. So you get to the end of Act 2 and there's no boss. And then, the worst screen of the entire game appears. I promise you, when you're playing through this zone, you will go through all 5 stages of grief. After clawing your way out of that hellhole, you end up in Sky Chase Zone with Sonic and Tails in hot pursuit of Eggman's battleship. This stage is an auto-scroller, which, I know, a little looked down upon in the Sonic games, but I see this as an opportunity to kick back and relax for a little bit. High in the sky with this nice, almost carefree music playing in the background, just the breather I needed after climbing out of hell. Here you half control a plane. The plane's movement is based on Sonic's position. Holding down will cause the plane to move down, and looking up will cause the plane to move up. It can feel a little stiff to be honest, but I suppose in a zone like this, it being an auto-scroller and all, that really isn't much of an issue. I honestly quite like this zone. Again, to me it acts as a nice little breather after getting out of Metropolis Zone. I also appreciated the little detail of seeing a little bit of the next stage's layout in the background here. It was a nice touch. Oh, and one more thing. Yeah, don't charge up a high-speed spin dash here. You will fall off. Finally, we've caught up to Eggman in the semi-final stage, Wing Fortress Zone. No, the opening isn't a cutscene, and oh shit, there goes Tails. This cutscene replays each and every time you have to restart the stage, which can get really annoying really fast. The stage itself isn't really all that hard. It mostly consists of precision platforming and timing challenges, as well as gimmicks we've seen before with a different coat of paint. Ah, it did have this here though. What even? Well, mocking questionable gameplay and design decisions aside, I'd say this zone is a pretty good semi-final stage, even if the boss is annoying without Supersonic, and even if it just feels really easy overall. Before I continue, I'd like to say that the upcoming part of the video has spoilers for the final zone of the game. I know the game is from like 1992, and it's likely that most people have played through the game at least once, but you never know. So if you're one of those people who haven't played through the Genesis version of Sonic 2, I'd suggest skipping to the timestamp on the TV. Again, we're talking about endgame spoilers here. So, just after you beat the boss of Wing Fortress, Eggman gets away once again. Just as Sonic fails to catch up to him, Tails shows up having made quick repairs to Sonic's plane. And without a second thought, Sonic jumps on, chasing after Eggman. Sonic and Tails soar higher and higher into the sky, and just as Eggman's escape ship almost gets away, Sonic jumps and holds on for dear life to the rocket, making it to the Death Egg. And now we're here, the final level of the game, Death Egg Zone. The setup here is perfect from a tone standpoint. Now you're in Eggman's territory, miles upon Tails away from the planet's surface. Sonic is all alone, with no easy nor safe way to head back down to the planet below. The level itself consists of 2 bosses, and even worse, you're at a massive disadvantage. There are no rings in this stage, nor are there any power-ups. It's just Sonic, Eggman, and 2 mechanical monsters before him. The tone here is further set by the music itself. It feels really eerie. It's a shame that it's almost immediately drowned out by the boss music. Speaking of bosses, let's get into the semi-final boss, Silver Sonic. Or Mecha Sonic? The name varies depending on where you're from. I've personally always called him Silver Sonic, though. His design is menacing, to say the least. One piercing red eye paired with his chunky build, buzzsaw quills, and lack of a paint job save for the shoes makes for quite the cold, intimidating opponent. He isn't too much trouble so long as you know his pattern and don't let the nerves of having 0 rings get to you. Just sit him on his face here and make sure that you don't get hit by the buzzsaw quills, dodge his spin dash attack, repeat, and just spin dash to the guy when he does this dash move here. I can still see why this guy is so challenging though. Especially for first-timers who haven't played this game before, and especially when you're burning through lives like they're flash paper. But after you struggle through him, that's when the real challenge begins. As Sonic chases Eggman down, who's somehow faster than Sonic. Damn, bro might be built like a stress ball of toothpicks or legs, but this motherfucker runs like Roadrunner. Anyways, Eggman still has one final trick up his sleeve before he's through, and that trick is the Death Egg Robot. Now this is how you do a final boss. The planet clearly in the background showing the player what's at stake, combined with the Death Egg Robot absolutely towering over Sonic himself. And to tie it all together, you have this suspenseful music in the background that almost makes it feel like Eggman is mocking Sonic, and by extension the player, for daring to face off against his ultimate creation. The boss itself is hard. Really hard. Keep in mind that even after you defeat Silver Sonic, you still don't have any rings. And to make matters even worse, you've likely wasted all of your lives attempting to defeat Silver Sonic, and even if you didn't, there aren't any checkpoints after the Silver Sonic fight. So you have to defeat the Death Egg Robot, as well as Silver Sonic, all in one run. Yeah, not very fair, is it? To make matters worse, the Death Egg Robot has the most annoying hitbox. You have to hit it just a little above its arms, the problem being that the robot's arms are spiked and usually moving, meaning that its weak point is hard as hell to reach without getting killed. And on top of all that, this thing takes 12 hits instead of the usual 8. And to further rub salt in the wound, the original game for the Sega Genesis, or the Mega Drive if you're weird, this game has no save system, meaning that if you run out of lives and continues here, which I did several times, you have to start back from the very beginning. But eventually, you do it. You land that final blow. And as the Death Egg goes up in flames, Sonic runs out of it just in the nick of time, falling down to the planet below. There's actually an alternate version of the final cutscene if you get all 7 Chaos Emeralds. Instead of Sonic falling from the sky to be caught by Tails, he's in a super form. According to the manual, Tails was just some kid that started following Sonic around, so I really prefer the non-supersonic ending, to be honest. It feels like that moment just solidified their friendship forever. Why Sonic now has so much faith in Tails, but that's just my opinion. At the end of the day, Sonic the Hedgehog 2 is a better game in every possible way when compared to Sonic 1, in my honest opinion. The gameplay is really fun, in part thanks to the new Spin Dash. The Chaos Emeralds actually reward the player properly, and overall, with some exceptions, the stage design heavily rewards both exploration as well as knowledge over how to use momentum and speed to your advantage. If you want to find the game now, you have a few choices. The mobile port of the game by Christian Whitehead and Headcanon, better known as Taxman and Stealth, is actually still up for Android as far as I know, and it's mostly free minus the occasional ad, which can be removed for about $2 or $3 United States dollars. If you don't mind the touch controls, or if you have a Bluetooth controller on hand, then this is a stellar port. It even adds Hidden Palace Zone, which is a well-known zone that was cut from the game last minute, back into the game, with new mechanics and a brand new boss. But if you want to play the game on PC or on consoles through official means, Sonic Origins is a release of the mobile ports remade for PC and consoles. Though I still haven't played the collection, so I still can't speak for myself on the quality. Apparently, they made some weird decisions though, so do keep that in mind if you choose this version of the game. Personally, my preferred way to play the game is through the fan project Sonic 2 Absolute, made by the same people who made Sonic 1 Forever. It's a fan-made PC port of the mobile port released back in 2013 that adds things like save functionality, the ability to play as Knuckles, mod support, and a whole ton of customization, so you can play Sonic 2 in your own ideal way. This does require the mobile ports to function, and I still strongly encourage that you support the official release, as does Team Forever themselves. And, of course, if you're looking for a physical copy of the original Sega Genesis game, at the time of writing this, the game seems to go from anywhere between 10 to 20 United States dollars. Well, that's about all I had to say about Sonic 2 while keeping this video at a semi-reasonable length, so I guess I'll see you next- Hey yo, this motherfucker likes the special stages of Sonic 2! Get his ass!